Have we got any apologies, substitutions or declarations of interest?
Convener, we have no apologies. All 11 councillors are present here today. I note in the chat box that Councillor Brooks has declarations in item 3 through his membership of Clyde Leisure Board and item 7 through his membership of the Board of River Clyde Homes. Do the other members of these bodies, if appropriate, wish to put their interest in? Thank you. Any other interests other than these?
Jim?
No, I was just acknowledging it's the same for item 3 for being in Clyde Leisure.
Okay. Okay, is that everyone? Yeah. Okay. If we can just remind folk to keep themselves on mute unless they're speaking, and to use the chat function, which I'll try my darndest to keep an eye on and bring folk in the right order. So bear with me with that. I'm not very good at multitasking, I'm afraid. So we'll move on to the business. So item number 2 is the revenue budget period ending 31st of October 2020. Mary, are you taking this?
Yes, thanks, Convener. This first report advised the Committee of the Budget Position at period 7, the latest projection being an overspend of 2.553 million, of which 2.547 million is related to the pandemic. The net overspend, excluding these costs, an overspend of just 6,000. The major variance is explained in section 5 and appendix 3. Appendix 4 provides an update in the committee's earmark reserves position, and just to note that the earmark reserves budget now reflects write-backs approved at full council on the 3rd of December. The committee is asked to note the projected overspend and the costs associated with the pandemic for which one-off funding has been agreed, as well as to note the earmarked reserve position. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Mary. I see we've got a question from Jim. Jim Mcqueen.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Page 1, item 2.3, paragraph 4 and paragraph 6 about the projected overspends. The first one's utilities, 42,000. As I thought during lockdown, a lot of the establishments, schools, etc., have been closed. I thought we would either have the same utility bills or less, going trace heating, etc. All our community halls, etc., would all be shut down as well. So a wee explanation why that's an increase. And item 6, the overspend on the non-routine vehicle maintenance, a wee explanation what that means, please, as well. Thanks.
Okay, Mary.
Yep, through you, Convener. In terms of the utilities, obviously, when this was done, it was before the kind of cold winter sets in. We might start to see underspends coming through at that stage. A lot of the buildings have still been open and are still using heating, still using lighting, but we're continuing to monitor it, and hopefully, if there are underspends, we'll start to see them. In terms of being an overspend, it's just in line with the previous year's outturn, which was an overspend, so the budgets are insufficient in that respect. In terms of the non-routine vehicle maintenance, it's a kind of recurring overspend as well, and it kind of tends to go in phases as when the vehicles are getting replaced. So, for instance, I think we're due new refuse collection vehicles this year, so next year we should probably see non-routine vehicle maintenance going down. So it really depends on what stage we are, especially with some of the bigger vehicles. So you start to see that going down as you invest, as the vehicles are at their early stages.
Okay, you okay with that, Jim? Yeah. Okay, thanks, Mary. Anyone else? No? Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Yeah. Okay, item 3 is the Capital Programme 2021 to 22-23 Progress Report. Mary, you again?
Yes, thanks, Convener. This report advises of the current position of the capital programme, and we're currently projecting to spend 300,000 under budget as a result of slippage in some SPT projects. There is net advancement being reported of 1.686 million, and the breakdown of this is summarised at 2.6 and in sections 5 to 9. The committee is asked to note the current position and the progress in specific projects, to approve the issue of tenders for the first phase of the cremator replacement project, and to grant delegated authority for the acceptance of these tenders, and also to note detail around the core property services allocation outlined at 3.3, and to note the addition of a project outlined at 3.4. Myself and the lead officers will take any questions.
Okay. Chris Curley.
Thank you, Convener. Just respect Square, I noticed that there was plans to address improvements existing South Square's cobbled roads. and there's a note that a lot of them are not actually adopted roads. I'm just wondering what sort of liability we have with respect to undertaking these works when they're not actually adopted, and subsequently to that, whether or not it's a case of you're actually doing these works, would it be maybe then look at adopting these areas of roads? The second question relates to the ground service accommodation. I know there's the plans for putting in modular accommodation in what they call it. I'm just wondering, touching upon the planned works to Ivy House, whether or not there's an opportunity to also maybe include some sort of modular accommodation within that redevelopment that might maybe save a bit of cost.
Premier?
Sorry, I don't know, Alan, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take the one about Custom House Quay. There are three major owners down there. There's the council owns some of the land, Peelport and the college. The bit of road we're looking at is immediately outside the Beacons Theatre, which is Peelport, and we are using specific money from the health and safety. Well, it wasn't health and safety, sorry, it was allocated money for to deal with trips, where people coming out of the theatre are tripping on that section of road. So we're specifically looking at that piece of road. I don't know if that answers your question. Or with regards to the adoption of the whole thing, none of the roads meet our road standard. So maybe that's something Gail could come in comment on. But I don't think we're looking to adopt any of the roads.
Okay. Gail, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, convener. Thank you. As we move forward with this, we're looking at agreement with the landowners, and we would look to see if there is the opportunity to bring them up to adoptable standard as they are in use by a number of people. And we don't want to get to a point that we're continuing to do repairs required.
Okay. Graham, would you like to come in?
Thanks very much. My question on 8.10 has been asked and answered. So obviously Chris and I singing from the same sheet at the moment. Question on 8.5. It was interesting when we talked about the waterfront leisure complex. There was no comment on the progress or not of the main pool floor being replaced. Is it just simply too early to get to this report, or has it been omitted?
I'll answer that. We've only just had confirmation that the work has to go ahead. So yes, certainly too early for this report. We're just about to appoint consultants for that. In fact, sorry, we have appointed a consultant for that. We've had the M&E input to it, and we are now preparing tender documents.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Ronnie, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Two questions, if you don't mind. The first one is page 22, 5.9, on the Dumshanty Road car park. I understand that we did have some objections initially. Not sure where we're at with those at the moment. Have they been withdrawn? And what's the progress on that one? And the second one, Michael, is page 24.5. It's agenda item 816. The report about the Craigmushet recycling facility, it actually says that there is an outlet pipe that runs from the quarry. Well, I'll have to say that was kind of news to me. So I'd be very interested to know where that outlet pipe joins the river, joins the Clyde, and basically what is the connection there? That would be interesting to know. Thanks.
Okay, Ronnie. Gail, do you want to take the Drumshanty Road aspect, and maybe Alan can come in for Craigmushet?
Yes, convener, thank you, Councillor, for the question. Maintained objections, we're writing out to those people that have put those objections in to ask if they can withdraw those. We send out a number of reasons why and responses to the queries that they have raised. So once we have a decision on that, we'll know when we can programme the works.
Okay, and the Craig Mushet Quarry?
Craig Mushet Quarry, the leachate pipe starts from within the quarry and runs down the road adjacent to the quarry down past the school. I'm not sure the exact route after that, but eventually discharges into the Clyde. Could I maybe ask Martin to come in on that? Because I think he's got more information on that level of the leachate pipe than I have.
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah, so through convener, the leachate pipe actually discharges into the Clyde in the middle of Cardwell Bay, and there used to be a buoy there to indicate where that pipe terminated, because people wanted to be able to sample the water there. However, after a number of years, it became clear that what happened was that there was no leachate coming from the quarry at all. So effectively it dried up and the buoy was removed, but it comes out in the middle of Cardwell Bay.
Now you know we're on it.
Yeah, Michael, that's very interesting. I know exactly when it comes out. Maybe just a couple of supplementaries, if you don't mind. Gail, have you any indication as to when that process will be completed or even started, in terms of writing to the people who have objected, asking if they still want to maintain it? And I think on the second one, Michael, I know exactly where that is because it's quite near the Albert. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yes, we have written back to them with liaison with our colleagues in legal, and the work programme to be completed by the end of this financial year. If we reach conclusion on that, while there's still some not withdrawn, we don't have clarity on that, but I'll be able to share that with members when I do.
Okay, Ron.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It'd be good to be kept up to date with that one. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a question from Innes Nelson.
Hello. Yeah, it's about the project at Inverkip under the city deal. It's just a note that, you know, as we know, it was kind of reliant on Scottish Power. But there's a mention there that negotiations are underway into the council progressing it, the improvements directly. I just wonder if we get a wee bit more information. Is the council actually going to be paying for this and then reclaiming it back from Scottish Power, or you know, what's the position here? And when is it likely to progress if this goes ahead?
Stuart or Scott, would you like to tell it?
Can't hear Stuart here.
No, I can't hear him either. Stuart?
Convener, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Convener, the reason behind this is that obviously it's taken us a long time to get Scottish Power to come to the table, and what we're attempting to do is to ensure that the works at Main Street happen as soon as possible. So what we're proposing to do here is split the project where the council delivers the roads infrastructure element at Main Street Inverkip, and Scottish Power continue to deliver the Bruaker end of the deal. The position is that Scottish Power came back to us at the very end of last year agreeing to the principle of splitting the project, which would mean that the council would be in charge of those works. They would incur the costs and then claim it back from the city deal in the same way that Scottish Power would have done that.
Okay.
Timescales, we need to, in terms of the timescales, Councillor Nelson, we just need to dot the I's and cross the T's with Scottish Power with regards to the agreement, and we have had discussions internally about progressing the project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and it's okay with that. Okay. Anybody else? No? Can we agree recommendations and report? Okay. Okay, thanks. Item 4 is
could you just get back on that there? If I could possibly come in there.
Yes,
Okay, that's lovely, thank you. There was two questions there. One was to do with the leachate pipe coming out from Craigmushet Quarry. Now, that pipe actually runs adjacent to the burn that comes down from Gourock Glen. And Martin was correct that it terminated just off the Admiralty Jetty, because many of the boat owners had to move their boats at the time, and they were all taken down to Inverkip. So I am well aware of the exact location of that pipe. The other part was the Custom House Square. Now, I understand the Inverclyde Council have actually adopted roads on three sides of that. Brimner Street, Open Shore, and at Custom House Place, I think it is, that leads on to Dockbreast, that they're actually all adopted. So it's only at the front of the Custom House. And you did mention Peelports. Now, the part of Peelport, are you referring to the part that comes under the 125-year lease, which again is adjacent to the Custom House Square?
Okay, John, thanks for that. Gail, do you want to comment on that?
I can come back on that. Yes, it's the road between Custom House and the theatre, which is part of the Peelports lease.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
John, thanks very much for that information. That was good. Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Yeah. Item 4 is the environment regeneration. Yeah.
Okay, so before we go on, I just want to clarify there's a phone-in caller, and I would like if somebody just identify who they are, please, so we'll post it for the record. There's somebody on the phone, it just says call-in user. Could they tell us who they are, please?
William Wilson, Inverclyde now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 4 is the Environment Regeneration Corporate Directorate Improvement Plan 2019 to 2022 Progress Report. Scott?
Thank you, Convener. I'd like committee to note the position of the CDIP. If I could draw your attention to a typo in paragraph 5.2, where it should be 8 improvement actions have a green and 6 have an amber status, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Scott, thank you. Any questions for Scott?
Whoever's organised the meeting, or is the sort of person that's has asked them to identify themselves?
No questions.
Okay. Michael, I have a question. I think I've just put it on the chat board.
Right, okay.
Thanks. It's just a very general one. It's on page 41, and it's agenda. It's number 5 about town centres, where the statement is working in partnership with the business community to implement a recovery plan. I take it that does not mean Gourock.
Scott?
Thank you, Convener. The recovery plan is our community recovery plan, and the economic part of it. We have an action plan against that that's been discussed with the members' sounding board. And the recovery plan in respect of town centres is about all the town centres, and that it reflects sounding the business community, doing what we can as a council in respect of all the assistance we can give, and also then lobbying on behalf of business for improvements where these are at a national level. So it does indeed cover all Inverclyde's retail and town centre activities.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Michael, with your permission. Scott, who in the business community from our locality is represented on that?
We chose the business community to be strategic across Inverclyde, so that the business community was very keen to have a focus group, but specifically representing Gourock would be the Chamber of Commerce for one, but we've also got Cardwell Garden Centre within the group. But I say the reason for having the group in the mix is so these people can be representative of their sectors and act strategically, as opposed to acting in respect of the locality.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's fairly good news. But But basically, I guess my supplementary question then would be, is there any feed-in with the Good at Regeneration or any regeneration forum, for that matter, from this strategic group?
Scott?
Thank you, Convener. The strategic group is purely in respect of the business community being a sounding board for a recovery plan. But the officers in developing the recovery plan obviously are using the regeneration forums for information. So the regeneration forums are a source of information to the officers, but the business sounding group sits separate from that. And all of this is then challenged through the overall recovery plan through the members of the sounding board.
Okay, it just seems to me to be perhaps another level of bureaucracy. But anyway, okay, thanks, Michael.
Okay, right, thanks. Okay, Chris Colley.
Thank you, Michael. It's just related to page 40, the shared services roads, item number 2. It talks about a structured collaboration with Western Berkshire Council related to the local transport strategy. I was just wondering when, as elected members, we'd be able to get sight of that local transport strategy.
Okay, Gail. Gail.
Thank you, Convener. Apologies, I am losing reception a little bit, so I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I missed the very last bit of your question, Councillor Curley, in relation to Transport Act and our working together.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you, Michael. It's really just wondering when we would, as elected members, see sight of the local transport strategy and be able to have input into it.
Because of the fact that we are both doing responses, we felt it was important to consider the impacts and implications of the Transport Act together as a working group. So we set up regular working groups, and at the appropriate time, yes, we will be setting up briefings with our respective members and looking for feedback on that process.
Okay, Chris.
Are we talking 3 months, 6 months, 9 months?
Gail.
Yep, thank you, Convener. Yes, we're working on it right now. Our programme we're developing, so I'll share that programme when we have that.
Okay.
Gail, you okay with that, Chris? Right, okay. Okay, Jim McElhinney.
No, it was just a request for Mr. Gooden to turn on your mute because there was a bit of
Right,
background. He's done that, thanks.
Okay, done that. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, any other questions? No? Can we agree the recommendations? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item number 5 is the repopulation, Riverside and Mcqueen and regeneration update. Scott.
Thank you, Convener. This report updates committee on the repopulation action plan, which is reported regularly to the Alliance Board. Riverside Inverclyde and its activities since the change in the delivery model and the regeneration forums. I'd like committee to note the recommendation in 3.1.3 to delegate to myself to commit the small amount of unallocated funds left in the original 2.5 million that was allocated in 2017-18 for towns and villages through the regeneration forums. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Graham.
Yeah, thanks very much. There's actually 3 questions, Scott. I'll just give you them all at once if that's helpful. A lot of numbers mentioned throughout the report, which obviously is a welcomed report. However, the measures seem to be about the funding that we've achieved as opposed to the actual number of jobs that have been announced or we're projecting. I'm just wondering, do officers have measures in place or targets in place of the numbers of new jobs that we've brought to Inverclyde? That's question 1. Question 2, this committee, I think it was this committee, wrote to the Scottish Government regarding Inchgreen Dye Dock and I can't recall a response from maybe the convener, or it was the leader of the council signed the letter. So I just wonder, I know the letter went, I remember seeing the context, but do we have a response from the Scottish Government regarding in-stream dry dock? And finally, Scott, item 3.1.3, which you have brought to our attention, the small amount is going to be given or allocated to the towns and villages. Do you know what percentage allocation? How will you decide what town or village gets what amount of the 2.5 million? We're delegating that to yourself, but is there any indications of how you'll cut the cake?
Scott, when to get your teeth into there? 3 questions.
Thank you, Convener. I'll answer the last question first. Of the 2.5 million, and I need to check the report, my recollection, there's only about £55,000 left unallocated, and that is against Guruk. So it's really a delegation to agree with Regeneration for the Guruk how that money is spent. Port Glasgow is slightly overspent. Greenock is fully committed but not spent, and all the towns and villages are spent. So it's a small amount of money just to mop that up. In terms of the other things, the Inchgreen dry dock, we wrote to Scottish Government about it, and I think it followed a motion to the committee last year. I can't remember exactly when. I think the motion reflected an approach made about the dry dock being taken under government control. To be honest, I can't recall the details of a response. Stuart might be able to help us in that, but we've moved significantly further forward on Inchgreen site and also the dry dock. And it might be helpful if I bring in Stuart to talk about Inchgreen at this stage, and also your question about the number of new jobs created across Inverclyde.
Okay, Stuart.
Convener, I'm conscious that we're in public session at this moment in time, and I'm happy to provide a fuller response in private in terms of the details associated with the negotiations which are taking place with regards to Inchgreen. It's safe to say that we have been successful in obtaining £1.36 million from the Clyde Mission Fund. We are in advanced discussions with Peel and an operator in regard to the Platers Shed, and we are progressing the joint venture in respect of the wider City Deal project, as well as the joint venture for the Platers Shed, but Convener, recognising that we are in public at this moment in time. With regards to job numbers, that's not readily available to us at this moment in time, simply because whilst the figures are available, they're not attributed to the individual report that Scott's produced, and we're happy to provide that to members in due course.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Graham, you okay with that?
Yeah, thanks very much. Helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no other questions or comments? No? Can we agree the recommendations? Yeah. Okay. Item number 6 is the Inverclyde Strategic Housing Investment Plan for 21-22 to 25-26. Martin, are you taking this?
Yes. Thank you, Convener. This is the annual update to the Strategic Housing Investment Plan, and really a lot of the projects on it will be familiar to you from previous versions. I haven't got anything particular to add to the report, other than if members would find it useful, one of our housing officers has provided us with an easy glossary on the types of housing accommodation, which makes it a bit clearer and helps, the differences between wheelchair accessible houses, etc., which might be helpful to members. I'm happy to circulate that if members would be interested in that. We also have recently received an update from Scottish Government on the outturns through the ship, which is we're quite happy to do an update to members on that and circulate that to members separately if you'd be interested. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Martin, see just before we go on, I'm sorry, I think I missed a question on the last item from Chris Curley. Chris, is that right?
Yeah. I was along the lines of what Graham was asking. The previous report has of what we've done, not so much about the out. These are going to be a report given by officers. I'd like to have more about what the outcomes we're getting. Is this money having an impact, and what kind of level, what kind of quantum is that impact, so that we know if we're actually investing appropriately to the repopulation and regeneration agenda.
Okay, Chris. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, so going back on to item number 6, we've got a question from, who is it on first? Is it Graham?
I'm not sure if it was, but I'll certainly go if that's fair. I've got 3 questions.
Okay.
I have put them in the chat for information. Question number 1 is talking about EIS. It's interesting that at page 8 of the SHIP, the paper doesn't refer to EIS 2, which is now enacted, if that's the right phrase. I just wonder if officers can advise if this will increase the costs to social landlords, and also confirm, I don't understand why EIS 2 wasn't a paragraph in our SHIP, which obviously clearly covers that point. That was question 1. Question 2, if I may, convener. Should we ring fence the proceeds from the asset sales from RCH within the housing regeneration area for strategic, for the existing stock? One of the challenges I think we have under stock transfer, the money obviously comes back to the council and the rules. There is acknowledgement within the SHIP of the oversupply of housing in several of Inverclyde's neighbourhoods, but it makes little sense that the money then goes directly to supply new homes. If RCH was able to utilise the receipts from the asset sales within regeneration areas, then this would support the regeneration of empty homes and improve housing conditions, which I'm sure all members would suggest is a priority for us. And finally, we have a number of challenges. We have a number of challenges with the costs of rents. I think in today's paper and previous papers, one of the councillors has made comments about a zero rent rise in our RSLs. So the challenge I have on the SHIP and on the policy is that our social housing tenants have paid Inverclyde Council 1,100k so far in the long-term empty housing council tax. One social landlord will pay 300,000k per annum in council tax for its void properties. So we're taking 300,000 out of the rents, basically, into our council tax. I'm not convinced that that was ever our intentions. The long-term empty homes was about social landlords, private or RSLs in large cities who were sitting on empty houses, and to carrot and stick to get them back on the market and back into use. What we're doing here in Inverclyde, we've got an area of depopulation. We've got houses that are void in hard-to-let areas, and yet we're taking potentially £300,000 a year from people's rents that are paid to the RSLs, and that was never the intention. And the SHIP does recognise that there is low demand areas, and it's a real issue. And additional social housing, if we build additional social housing, which obviously is happening through the SHIP, it will aggravate the problem of the voids. But it admits, I think the SHIP admits to reflect its policy of the sale of low demand housings. So what our policy is currently doing is we're promoting growth in a number of local social housing in our local areas, which is great. But then we're blocking the sale of existing low demand property that RSLs can't get rid of. And then what we're doing is we're collecting empty homes council tax on those homes that they can't let, they can't sell, they can't give up. So we're actually quite creating a nice monopoly for ourselves. And I know that's not our intention. Our intention is to get good houses at good cost for our constituents. And so question 3 is a long-term empty housing homes council tax policy, is it the plan, does it actually work as we try to regenerate such areas as Eastern Gateway? And does it really say that we're working positively in partnership with RSLs?
I will answer a couple of those questions and then maybe revert to Janet Stitt, who's here to support me on some of the technicalities of this, possibly on the East 2 question. So if I can start off with the long-term empty homes, Councillor Brooks will be aware that obviously the council's being challenged in the courts over our long-term empty homes strategy and how that's imposed. So I would probably prefer not to go into too much detail on that here and now in public session. However, I think it's probably important to note that one of the reasons that this is levied on social RSLs in the same manner as it's levied on both private owners and private landlords is that we were concerned that we need to be treating all sectors fairly and the same and not penalising one sector over another. And therefore, where a private owner, regardless of whether they're a landlord or simply an owner-occupier, has an issue with a property and that property is damaged in some way, that they can apply to have that closed. And once the property has a closing order on it, it will no longer be liable for long-term empty homes levy. In terms of the RSLs, there is a similar provision. However, rather than a closing order on an individual property, what is looked for from the RSL is effectively a resolution to their board that the properties are intended for demolition and will not be relet. Now, I appreciate that can sometimes give issues with individual properties in other areas where there's not an intention to demolish, but that is intended to address those areas where there might be an intention to demolish. Where there are properties that are hard to let, we are separately looking through the SHIP at an acquisition strategy, which I think answers some of Councillor Brooks' question. And we have had meetings with the RSLs on what that might look like, and we'll be progressing that over the next year. The obvious intention is to have a strategic framework through which landlords can dispose of properties and possibly purchase other properties to consolidate ownership, which will enable them to improve areas, which is a thing that they struggle with at the moment. So that's recognised, and it's recognised that there's a need to improve some of the stock that we have now rather than simply building new stock. And I think over time, the emphasis on the SHIP will come to look more like that and hopefully not result in the same pressures on difficult to let stock. So that's something we're very well aware of, and we have had discussions with the RSLs about, so we will be looking at that in future. What we have to do, particularly in reference to River Clyde Homes and Larkfield, is the terms of the stock transfer. And technically, if a stock transfer RSL disposes of a property, that money technically has to go back to government. So what we need is to develop a strategy which will enable us to justify that money being recirculated back into Inverclyde to either do up properties that exist or to purchase properties to enable those schemes to go forward. So we're well aware of that, and it's something that we've had meetings about in the last few months, and we'll be progressing, and hopefully that will come through in the next SHIP a bit more clearly. If I can maybe pass on to Janet to see if she's got any comments on the East 2 question.
Janet?
Hello there. I suppose in response to any increase in costs that might manifest themselves in relation to compliance with the East 2, there is opportunity for RSLs to look to Scottish Government for an increase in benchmark level if they are struggling to provide those particular standards. However, that's not something that has been brought to us or raised as a concern to date.
Okay, thanks, Janet.
Okay, sorry, if I may, as a supplement, why was East 2 is not mentioned in our SHIP? I just wondered, is there a technical reason for that, or was it an amendment, or was it an addition by mistake, omitted by mistake?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't an intentional. It wasn't intentional to miss that out in any way, shape, or form. It's just simply that it's not been a concern that's been raised by any of the RSL in making their applications to the SHIP.
Okay. Colin, I'm sorry, I should have brought you in before now, but Colin, you want to come in?
Aye, thanks, Michael. It's really just a request of Martin. It seems that the demand for larger family homes is not being met by our registered social landlords, Michael. And I don't know if anybody else is getting this. There seems to be many families living in Inverclyde in overcrowded accommodation. So it's just to ask Martin if we could get a further report on this demand on larger family homes to kind of determine the scale of the problem. So it was just a request on a further report, Michael, on the supply and more the demand of larger family houses, and if the SHIP is meeting that need, and if not, if it is going to look at it. This is also being identified by the House Needs and Demand Assessment, which is also identified this, Michael. So it was just a request of Martin. Thanks.
Okay, Martin.
So if I can come in there, I think the Housing Needs Demand Assessment's being updated currently. So hopefully once that comes through, then that can be reflected in a report to committee on what the findings of that are, and that will hopefully answer some of your questions, Councillor Jackson. But what I will do is I'll go back and find out when the updated HNDA is due, and if it's quite a long way in the future, we'll see if we can bring something sooner with any assessment of need. What I'm not aware of is any, and maybe Janet can help me with this, is whether we have any evidence as a strategic housing authority of overcrowding issues, because I certainly wasn't aware of anything particular, but maybe Janet can come in on that.
Janet?
No, yet again, that's not something that's been brought to us, but it wouldn't necessarily come to us in that manner. But we can contact the RSLs and just see what we can find out from them if there is a particular concern. Bearing in mind they are the ones who shape what they make their application to the SHIP in respect of. What we would hope and expect of them is that if there is a particular concern that they have people in need of large size family homes, and they have within their gift the ability to make an application to the SHIP for larger homes, then we expect them to make that application and come to us with it. However, let's go away and contact them. If that's a particular concern, we can come back to you on that.
Michael, can I possible just address the issue here? I've had quite a number of requests from families, and the problem seems to be is when they put in a request for a family home and the social landlord comes back and says the houses, the properties aren't available or they're not getting built, they are asked to raise a complaint. A lot of the times the issue is getting highlighted because by the time they go through the complaints procedure, points 1 and 2, a lot of them just give up, they get fed up because it takes so long. I mean, it's not uncommon for a family to sit on a housing waiting list for 4, 5, 6 years for a larger family home. By that time, elder children have taken the decision to move out of the family home to ease the overcrowded situation. So a lot of times it's not that evident because they fall off the radar. So it's just to kind of put that out there, Janet. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
No, that's actually much more helpful to have a bit of context around what the particular issue that's been brought to you is. So let me do some investigation. I can come back on it.
Okay, thanks very much. Jim McLean.
Thanks, convener. Page 59 of the agenda. The third last paragraph to do with the former Ravenscraig Hospital. There's a sentence in there that I would like to remove. It starts, these reports prove to be unsubstantiated. The second last paragraph starts, public and political fears have since been allayed, but I'd like to remove that as well. So I'd like to put a proposal to adjust the wording in two of these paragraphs. I would remove in total from the word these to however, and then you'd be starting the sentence with this on that third last paragraph, and remove public through to and then you would start the new sentence with the volume.
Okay, Jim. Any other member want to come in?
For item or another item, convener?
Chris, if you want to come in on this item and we'll go back to Jim's comment at the end.
No, it's not some related to Jim's comment. I've put my my request for making a comment stroke question in the chat, so just so it doesn't get missed. But I'm quite happy to wait.
No, just come in just now, Chris.
Thanks, Michael. Just a couple of points. First of all, obviously, Graham's made a lot of good points here today with respect to the issues about what they call about ish and about the LT level. I just want to pick up on a couple of things related to LT level. We've got a paragraph that says the number of empty properties in Inverclyde has decreased, and it says the money from the LT level will be redirected into affordable housing in the area, and also there's been a bit of discussion about that in this meeting. I'm just wondering, is that a specifically ring-fenced funding that landlords or other affordable housing suppliers can apply for, or is it just a general assumption? Is any money? What I'm basically saying is that the money received from the long-term empty properties through the council tax, is that funding ring-fenced and put into what they call an earmarked reserve, so that it can be utilised by providers of affordable housing and to actually improve their affordable housing offer. The second of all relates to, if you go to page 56, and apologies if this, I don't know exactly where to actually take this in the agenda papers for today, because it comes up a number of times. It is about including wheelchair accessible homes. Now we've had discussions last year, and it's been ongoing for a number of years. So we've been identified that we'll be reviewing the 3% target for wheelchair accessible housing, and I'm just wondering exactly that we're going to get that, because we've got a statement here that informed by evidence gathered through especially Council's annual SHIP and LHS update will include a revised wheelchair accessible target. But looking at the documents that are after this one in this meeting, we don't seem to have that's not addressed within the documents. We're still talking about having the 3% target. So I'm just wondering, when are we going to be changing that target? When are we going to get a report to change that target? We've got another year's gone by and we've still got the same 3% target.
Martin.
So on the wheelchair accessible target, that was awaiting effectively. We have a specialist housing, I've mentioned this in the past, a specialist housing review group looking at these targets across the piece. However, the specialist housing review group drew quite heavily on staff, amongst others, from the Health and Social Care Partnership, and the impact of the pandemic on the staff of the Health and Social Care Partnership has meant that process, which we had hoped to bring before members, I think I had originally probably hoped to bring that before members in May last year. We were unable to do so because we didn't finalise it. There have recently been meetings before Christmas to look again at this, and I would hope, I know this is going to sound bad, but given that we've had a pandemic, we are where we are, I will probably hopefully bring that report before members in May this year, which will then give us the basis for reviewing the target. So I apologise for the delays in that, but I think they've largely been unavoidable.
Okay, Chris, you okay with that?
I just come in at that point. Forget
I hope not, but obviously a lot of that depends slightly on where we are over the next two or 3 months. Realistically, I would like to say May, but you may well be right, Councillor, that August might be a more realistic, and it might just be better just to say so. But we'll bring it as soon as it is available.
Okay. Jim Coffey, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's really just a comment, and it probably links in with what Graham was saying earlier. And it might link into the next agenda item as well, because both of them are very much linked. One of the problems we've got is housing is very much on the back of the Scottish Government policy. So the Scottish Government policy is putting money towards new builds. So our RSLs are putting bids into the Scottish Government, and that's why we've got this plethora of new builds. And what that does, it's if you've got a choice between a new build or staying, I know everybody knows this, staying in your own locality, you go for a new build. And that's one of the problems we've got. So one of the problems you've got, and you can understand, this is not a go at the Scottish Government, you can understand in areas of Scotland that are needing an awful lot of new builds, you could understand the targets that are asked to deliver. You can understand the reason behind that policy. But in areas like Inverclyde, what we're actually seeing is that change in population. So therefore, places like our town centres in some of our older schemes are seeing that decrease in population. And it's only until we have that fundamentally changed that allows places like Inverclyde to invest in their older properties that we're going to see that change. So hopefully when we see the Eastern Gateway survey come out, when we see the Port Glasgow Town Centre and the Greenock Town Centre, that will give us a bit of ammunition to ensure that properties we've got can get investment in them. That's probably my comment on that. The other comment is on the back of Collins as well. One of the problems that we get is we're not actually building enough houses for the population that's going to come. So the population that's coming, we're getting told, as we all know, is an increasing elderly population, and we've got increasing number of single men and single women. So we don't really need 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom houses. And I take Colin's point about big families. Of course we need them, but we need to target it better to smaller houses. And I think going forward, our SHIP will need to reflect that. So it's probably 2 comments, Chair, for this and probably the next agenda item as well. Thank you.
Okay. Martin, do you want to comment on that?
I suppose I said at the outset, one of the difficulties with the SHIP is that quite a lot, because of the time taken in bringing these projects to fruition, what you see in the SHIP today maybe doesn't reflect the kind of conversations we're having about where it should be in the future. And the projects in the SHIP are probably projects that were begun sort of 2, 3, 4 years ago. So probably the most useful thing I can say is that in terms of the conversations we had before Christmas with the RSLs, in terms of getting a refurbishment strategy that would look to actually plough money, ideally with Scottish Government agreement, into refurbishment of existing properties rather than new builds, then that's probably the way forward for quite a bit of the SHIP going forward. But it may take a year or 2 to actually come through and appear as projects. And it will never appear probably as necessarily big strategic projects because it will be a lot more bits and pieces. But we are certainly looking at that with the RSLs. It's a concern from the RSLs, it's a concern from ourselves, and it's one of the things that we want to look at going forward. I've also just realised, Convener, that I didn't answer part of Councillor Curley's question on the long-term empty homes income and the ring fencing of it. I would need to go to colleagues in finance to get a breakdown, but certainly a significant proportion of the LTA income goes towards financing some of the affordable housing. What I'll have to do though is come back to him on that.
Okay. Martin, would you like to advise committee on the alterations that Jim would like to make to the wording of the report?
So, the wording, what I would say is the wording of the report reflects the complaints about the land contamination and the advice, the professional advice from our contaminated land officer, and how that's been reflected through the planning process. So in terms of land contamination at Ravenscraig, I think the council is quite clear that the contamination at Ravenscraig is effectively nothing particularly unusual in a brownfield site. I think we have to be realistic about it. And a lot of the reporting doesn't reflect that. And certainly a lot of the reporting that we've seen is quite, how can I put this, overblown in terms of descriptions of the land as being poisoned, etc. The things that we found there are not unusual for any brownfield site, and they're the kind of things that we find there. What I would probably want to be very wary of is I'm aware that issues were raised at the planning board, and not having been present, and probably they are the domain of the planning board. I wouldn't want to go into those in any detail, but they may reflect Councillor McElhinney's comments. So I don't know if either Stuart or Scott might want to comment on that side of things, but by and large, it's a planning issue, and from our perspective, there are no unusual features about that site.
Okay, Scott, do you like to come in?
Thank you, Convener. Just to sort of emphasise what Martin was saying there, I think the key issue for me in respect of Councillor McElhinney's proposal is whether the text is accurate and also whether it's appropriate to be in this document. So I have reviewed it since Councillor McElhinney put the proposal forward. I am comfortable that the statement is both accurate and appropriate, and the officers would stand behind it.
Okay, Jim, do you want to come back in?
I'm not, sorry, thanks, Convener. I'm not disputing the accuracy of the report, i.e. the contaminated land findings, etc. What I'm saying is it adds nothing to the report having the words in. It's only been provocative from someone who may well be aggrieved and still has their doubts. It adds nothing to have the words in, and it takes nothing away by removing the words to the substance of the report, is the point I'm trying to get across.
So you want to move something, Jim, or are we going to go with?
Yeah, what I've said is that I would like to remove the, in my words, provocative words. So I would like to remove from that paragraph that starts the former Ravenscraig Hospital. I would like to move that we remove the words, these reports prove to be unsubstantiated and whoever, and then you start a new sentence with this. I'd also like to remove the word unfounded from that paragraph. The next paragraph, I'd like to remove the words public and political fears have since been allayed, but the perception created of the site and then start a new sentence with the volume.
Jerry, would you like to talk us through?
Thank you, Convener. At the present, we have a motion from Councillor McElhinney involving the deletion of those words. These reports proved to be unsubstantiated, however. New sentence, this situation highlighted to us that public perception due to negative press allegations can be a very real development constraint. Deleting the next line, public and political fears deleted, and to start the new sentence, new paragraph, the volume of work. That's the motion from Councillor McElhinney. You've heard from officers, from both the Corporate Director and from Mr McNabb, that their wording is factual and is to be supported in the proposed statement. It is for the members to determine what they wish in their strategic housing implementation plan. If there's an amendment to propose the existing wording, convener, and I'd be awaiting for that amendment to propose the existing wording. Then there would be a vote simply on that basis, on the basis of Councillor McElhaney's motion.
Stephen, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a pretty contentious development, and I haven't publicly commented, I have to say, on this development because I'm not a member of the planning board. But in terms of strategic housing, it is clearly a key project, and clearly the view of the council as the strategic housing authority is that these houses can be safely developed on that site. Otherwise, we wouldn't be supporting the particular proposal to build houses on that site. But I can understand the sensitivities around the wording, and clearly there are people who remain to be convinced around it. And having considered the proposed amendments from Jim, I don't think those amendments detract from the substance of the section and what the purpose of the section is, which is to highlight constraints that there can be on development, and clearly concerns around this particular site have led to issues that have prolonged, I suppose, the development period for this particular project, and added obviously to what also has been highlighted around COVID. So I'm comfortable enough personally with the amended wording, to be perfectly honest, because I don't see that it detracts from the substance of what's in the report.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Anything else? No, can we agree with that then?
Convener, there are no contrary amendments. The wording will be altered according to the terms of the unanimous approach of the council.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Okay, so we can agree recommendations. Yep. Item 7 is the Local Housing Strategies 2017 to 2022 update report. Martin, you again.
So once again, this is kind of as has been pointed out, this is kind of the partner document to the SHIP on the overall housing strategy. Again, it's an annual update document, so I'm happy to take any questions. A key part of the local housing strategy, though, will be the study referred to earlier on specialist housing need. So happy to take any questions on the LHS.
Okay, can we agree recommendations? Yeah. Okay. Okay, item number 8 is the Scottish Housing Regulator Annual Assurance Statement. Martin, you again.
Me again, yep. Thank you, Convener. This is the annual assurance statement that the council is required to make to the housing regulator. It's in two parts, reflecting the two key areas of the council that are regulated by the regulator, and these are homelessness and the council's remaining stock of housing for rent, which is obviously the tied houses. I think probably some of the issues raised in the first part about homelessness have been aired a number of occasions at the Policy and Resources Committee in terms of the increased demand and the issues, the pressures put upon homelessness services. And I think that this report reflects that. And it does appear to be a kind of national issue as opposed to just a local issue. And the second part is on the tied housing, which I think if there are any specific questions on that, then Gerald could probably answer those. Happy to answer any questions, though, to the best of my ability.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Any questions for Martin? Don't see any in the chat. Agree recommendations? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, item number 9 is one of the late reports, the East Hamilton Street flooding update report. Gail?
Thank you, Convener. This report sets out an update to members, setting out some of the actions taken to address the flooding issues at East Hamilton Street. The council attended a liaison meeting with other stakeholders such as Transport Scotland and Scottish Water, And the report sets out in item 4.3 a number of the actions that have already been taken by our partners, and the proposed actions are set out in item 4.4 that are to be carried out by Transport Scotland and Scottish Water, dependent on which comes under their responsibility. There'll be more detailed timelines and programme information shared with members when this is made available. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Gail. Chris Collett.
Thank you. I've picked up something within the report. First of all, I'm a wee bit annoyed that the sort of carrier pipe has been taking so long to get fixed, and the gullies at the old railway bridge have been damaged. You'd think that would be routine maintenance. It should be done and fixed within a very short period of time, but it obviously took a lot longer to do. So obviously we just need to keep on the case to make sure that the Transport Scotland and their agencies undertake the works as best they can. It's good to say that long-term solution. One of the things I've picked up on here is they're talking about a large amount of traffic management when the works are being undertaken. And my concern would be how we ensure that disruption to what they call to the A8 is minimised, especially as we all know it is the main arterial route in and out of Greenock from Glasgow. So my concern is to make sure that any solution actually considers what they call that such traffic management have on the local economy, and we make appropriate officers make appropriate representations to ensure that we can at least ensure that there is actually 2 lanes of traffic in both directions throughout that works, because really we don't want to be sitting along down to single lane working on A8.
I think we'd all concur with that, Gail.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we sit on that liaison group meeting. It's a regular meeting, and we have asked that at the appropriate time, any information such as that, and we have already raised that will be an important consideration for ourselves, is brought to that liaison meeting so that we have the opportunity to discuss when it's at the development stage rather than at the proposal stage.
Okay. Graham.
Thanks very much, Convener. Yeah, I welcome the content of the report. It's good to actually see it in black and white. And I would also at this stage like to just say that the local media has covered this report in today's press, and it's a very fair report in the press. So it's good for those people who choose to engage with the press will actually read what's actually happening on the floods. The challenge that, if you don't read the report and you don't read the local press, and there's a lot of people who don't, Inverclyde Council get hammered on the failure of us to fix that road. And I won't swear on that line, but there's usually a few swear words in there as well. I just wonder, obviously, who's in charge? Gail, we're on a group, there's 4 of us sitting around the table. How can we ensure that somebody is leading this and running it forward as much as we can, and that the comms is as best as we can to ensure that our constituencies understand the challenges that Inverclyde Council face with regards to the A8?
Gail.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it is a complicated position to get across to residents and businesses in the fact that it goes through Inverclyde, but it's not an Inverclyde responsibility, that road. It comes under Transport Scotland. So what we have now included within our liaison group is an item that looks at sort of communications, so that we can get a balance, but also the same message going out from all partners, so that there's not a confusion and a bit of a finger pointing or any of that kind of behaviour, so that if we can consistent message and make sure that we are getting the information out at the correct time so that people are aware of what's happening and when and why it's happening, then hopefully that will alleviate some of the frustration. So that will be a continued item on all of those liaison meetings.
Okay, Stephen.
Thanks, Convener. I mean, I very much welcome this report and the the progress that has been made. It's been a very long time coming. And I don't think actually we'd be here at this stage if it wasn't for the council and our officers pushing this particular issue over many years. I can understand James' frustration, but I think people are a bit more better educated now than perhaps they were in the past, and I think they do understand where responsibility for the trunk road rests. But yeah, communication is clearly important. Clearly, if there are major works required here to address this issue, there is going to be disruption, and we have to acknowledge that you can't make an omelette without cracking eggs, and we've seen disruption at the Bull Ring roundabout, for example, in terms of when works were getting carried out there. So I think we need to anticipate, and obviously I support Chris in the view that we need to try and keep that to a minimum. I'm not so sure how you can achieve keeping two carriageways open in both directions and completely work. So I think that's a bit optimistic, Chris. I think maybe you meant one carriageway open in both directions, but I think we need to accept there will be disruption. But yeah, let's see if we can try and keep it to a minimum. That might be in terms of when the work is actually programmed to be carried out and what can be done at night and what can be done at weekends, etc. Because it is obviously the main road through the district.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay, can we agree recommendations? Yeah, okay, thank you. Item number 10 is for new car park in Jamaica Street, proposed restrictions. Gail.
Thank you, Convener. This report requests approval to promote a 3-hour car park that's been constructed at Jamaica Street. This car park will have 22 new spaces, and it's proposed that the restriction is in place from Monday to Friday, 8 AM to 6 PM, and will support the access by encouraging turnover to the town centre businesses and amenities. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Any questions for Gail? Chris? Chris Colley.
Gail's breaking up there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right. I'll try on regard. Carry on regard. Basically, I welcome the fact there's obviously this car park's coming in, but I'm a wee bit concerned that we're sort of like, again, it's very localised what we're going to do with this car park against what we're going to do with other car parks. And just a wee bit, we're now dealing with post-COVID, we were trying to encourage more people into the town centres. We've still got quite a large amount of restrictions in our car parks with respect to what they call green up, for instance, don't have what they call free parking. I think looking at that going forward, the COVID, to make a decision about trying to encourage people to the town centres to utilise the town centres. I'm also just thinking about how this, because obviously out within sort of shopping area. So if somebody wants to park in the car park for parking the car to service this car park 150 metres or thereby, they then have to travel 100 get with street to get to the car park. This on the car, then go back to the shopping. And this sort of measure would really work for this car park. So I think we need to look at some sort of alternative. So I just want to propose that, taking the factors that this car park's here, we're looking at proposing a road order. I know and wider with respect to car parking in surrounding areas, but that's not happened for a variety of reasons. All the car parks in Greenock, making them free for 3 years, because paid. in the chat.
We just missed the last part of that there, Chris.
Convener, I think Councillor Curley has put his proposal in the chat now, is that correct?
Yeah. Can everyone see it in the chat?
Speed picking up.
Hi Scott, how are you?
Okay. Gail, do you want to come back on that?
Sorry, I'm having issues unmuting. I would suggest
Hi, Scott.
that when we look at the wider review of all car parks, which unfortunately has been delayed due to the teams dealing with the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I've been messaging him again. I think the issue seems to be at his end, so I did offer him to speak to the convener.
Okay, that's it. Sorry, Gail.
I wasn't sure if it was me. I think the appropriate time to review the use of the discs and review the daily charge and the different approaches and different parking approaches in different car parks would be when we're carrying out that full review. It would be our main priority with the Jamaica Street car park is to ensure that there is that turnover, and the risk is that we open the car park without any kind of restriction and it's used for all day parking. So the 3 hours does permit that turnover and permit people to have a period in the town centre and then move on and let someone else reuse that space. Happy to take further questions on this though.
Okay, Jim, do you want to come in, Jim Cogherty?
Yeah, really just on the back of that, I think it's a wee bit naughty of Chris. I mean, what he's done is, on the back of this agenda item, he's virtually changed the whole parking regiment for Inverclyde. And as I said, as a town centre councillor, I mean, I know everybody talks about their own area and then everybody's got an opinion in Greenock Town Centre. I suppose for me, if something's not broke, then you don't need to fix it. I personally think that the parking discs work. I've always thought the parking discs work. I think the parking discs works up in Cat Street very well. And I would hope that they would work equally well here. But I'm quite prepared to have that open conversation under an actual paper when we're discussing the overall parking structure within Inverclyde, rather than putting it on the back of an innocuous paper with regard to the new car park in Jamaica Street. I think there is a time to do that, and this is not the time.
Okay, Stephen.
I'm happy. I'm happy for Gerard to come in, because he's probably going to say what I was part of what I was going to say, convener. And I'm happy to come in after Gerard.
Okay, Gerard, do you want to come in first?
Thank you, convener. I need to advise you, convener, and the committee in terms of Councillor Curley's motion. I thank Councillor Curley for putting that down in writing to assist. There's no doubt it's a business item. Anything that affects the proposed new car park at Jamaica Street is competent for this committee. There's no doubt about that. It's a business item, and to that extent, bullet point 1 of Councillor Curley's proposed motion is undoubtedly competent. I have to advise you, convener, and advise Councillor Curley through the means of the video conference that parts 2 and 3 are of a far wider nature. They are not business items in front of this committee. Other members have not had any notice or prior notice of the wider elements of that. And secondly, there is a potential financial consequence in terms of its breadth that would have to be reported to another committee. To that extent, I would be advising you, convener, that parts 2 and 3, the bullet points thereof, are not competent for this decision in front of this committee. And then secondly, I would be saying that bullet point 1 certainly is competent, because that is a business item. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Steve, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to accept that advice from Gerard. I mean, my view is probably very similar to Jim's in a sense, is that I was under the impression, as Gail had sort of alluded to, that we were going to have a review of the parking strategy in relation to Greenock anyway, and that what we were dealing with here was the fact that we're trying to get this car park up and running as soon as it's completed and available for use. And this would potentially be an interim solution until the overall strategy was agreed. So I think even accepting what Gerard's advice is, that we really should be looking at the long-term proposals for car park in Greenock Town Centre as part of a comprehensive strategy, and not on the back of a decision as to how we initially implement a scheme at this particular car park. I don't accept Chris's view that there aren't premises close by this particular car park that you couldn't get a supply of discs to. I mean, there's a cafe just on the same street, just a wee bit further down the road, and there's shops around the corner. You don't need to go as far as West Hall Street. So I don't accept that premise. In fact, there's a business centre across the road from the car park as well. But I think we should look at a solution for the short term and consider any longer term solution as part of a wider strategy review.
Okay, Chris, do you want to come back in? Oh, sorry, wait a minute, it's Chris. We'll bring in Graham Brooks first. Sorry, Chris.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Graham Brooks, sorry.
Thanks, Kevin. It was actually very similar to what Councillor Mcqueen was saying. I just wondered if Gail could ensure us that visitors to the area who don't have discs will have clear signage of where to obtain the discs, and obviously the business centre across the road is a good place. The new Don Coffee Bookshop, obviously when it's opened into COVID, would also be a good place. I just wonder if we can go the extra mile here to ensure that there's appropriate notification of where visitors to Inverclyde can actually obtain the disc that's now required.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Do you want to come back in?
I have to take cognizance of the advice given to the convener with respect to what they call the competency of the motion. I thought I was hopeful that that given the fact that we have this issue's been raised, and previously in the committee on the 5th of March we decided to put a long-term strategy, but strategy hasn't happened yet. Hopefully we can hear you. So I think there is something about this. My concern is make sure we get something in place to deal with, so that when we bring out COVID, that we've actually got things that encourage people into our town centre. And my concern is, if we're having, what sort of timescale are we going to be able to bring this stuff back? I'm conscious of the fact that we've had the P&R meeting recently. We don't want to be bringing new agenda items to committees where we want our officers to concentrate on the current COVID emergency. But at the same time, we've got an issue where we want to try and encourage people into town centres immediately after COVID to try and get that throughput, get that economic activity re-going again. So I'm just wondering whether an officer could be able to comment about when they think they will be able to get that wider strategy back to us again.
Okay, would you want to comment on that?
I seem to be able to get a more realistic timeline to you. So, I in the amendment
Okay, Chris, you happy with that?
Yeah, no, I'm agreed with that. I think I'm still going to, what do you call it? I want to go into this bit because I think my original plan was to me look at in our group was to look at what changing the what do you call the patterns on respect to Dalrymple Street and West Stewart Street, because I think they're closer to what do you call it to what do you call West Blackall Street. But at the moment, I'm happy to take away what do you call it. Just take away the second 2 points, and I'll move what do you call it, the first point only.
Convener, could I please ask, Convener, excuse me, could I please ask, I missed what Gail was advising just immediately before that because of Gail cutting out. Does Gail wish to advise the committee about the implementation of any £2 charge for periods of stay, if the committee is persuaded to do this, and any procurement that might be required or installation that might be required of pay and display machines, so that the committee has got a view as to any implications of bullet point 1? I just missed what Gail was saying there, Convener.
Okay.
Yes, I'm happy to repeat that. I hope you can hear me okay. Should parking machines be required, which they would be if there was a £2 charge, there would and there would also be, we would then have a charges on this charge as well.
Gail, you broke up again there, I'm sorry. Could you maybe try that again with your camera off? I don't know if that would make any difference.
Convener, try it.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. It's the fact that should we implement a £2 there's also an annual maintenance charge as well.
No, Gail, you're breaking up again, Gail. Sorry. Jenny?
Convener, I think Gail is attempting to advise the committee that there will be costs in relation to the installation and procurement of pay and display machines, and that there will also be other maintenance costs relative to the implementation of a charging policy. That's what I think Gail is trying to advise the committee. I just want the committee to know before they vote on any proposal that might come forward, or if they proceed unanimously, that there could be financial consequences to Councillor Curley's bullet point 1. Not my place, but I know that Gail's got difficulty advising the committee, Convener. Thank you.
Okay. Scott, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Convener. It's just to touch a little bit on the COVID situation, because we obviously had a meeting in December when we were expecting to go back to this committee and advise on a strategy for reintroducing pay and display. We're in a very different place just now. We don't know where we're going to go with COVID. We've got restrictions in place until the end of January for certain. It's likely to be beyond that, possibly significantly beyond that. My advice to committee just now is that this is not the right time to make strategic decisions. And we have to be mindful of that. The other issue is, in terms of officers' recommendations, we would want to engage with the Business Sounding Board and a recovery process as part of any strategy that we bring forward. So it's just for committee members to have that in mind.
Okay, Scott, thank you.
Convener, Convener, thank you, Convener. With your permission, therefore, we have a motion from Councillor Councillor Curley, forgive me, from Councillor Curley.
Jerry, see before we go on, Chris, taking cognizance of what Gail and Scott have said, do you still want to go ahead with your motion? Chris? Chris?
Sorry, it's obviously. Hello, can you hear me okay? I think still go ahead with the motion, yes. So I don't think I don't want to be in another with the this system in car park. Whereas if you actually go ahead, the opportunity to actually install a pay and display, it's more likely going to be in keeping with all the other car parks in the area.
So you don't want that filtered into a longer term review of car parking, Chris? You want this for the Jamaica Street car park?
Well, so that's why I think the paper was brought. I think deal with Jamaica Street now. No discs, and then the wider what do you call it, the wider car parking arrangement within Greenock Town Centre to try and encourage more people into the area.
Okay, Jared.
Thank you, Convener. I have therefore a motion from Councillor Curley as referred to in bullet point 1. I won't repeat it unless required, Convener. And Convener, is there any amendment in respect of the recommendations or any other aspect? Convener, I stand by.
Okay. I would stand by the recommendations in the report, Jerry.
Thank you, Convener. I have an amendment from the Convener in respect of the recommendations on page 105. Are there any other amendments, Convener? Convener, I see no other amendments. On that basis, Convener, we have a motion from Councillor Curley in respect of the new Jamaica Street car park. Shall be free parking for the first 3 hours with £2 charge for periods of stay in excess of 3 hours, controlled by pay and display tickets. We have the amendment in your name, Convener, in respect of recommendations 3.1, 3.2 and page 105. I will proceed with a roll call vote, the motion being Councillor Curley, the amendment being the Convener. I will go through the committee members. Councillor Alfeld, motion, Councillor Curley, or amendment, Convener?
Motion.
Councillor Brooks.
Amendment.
Councillor Clockerty.
Amendment.
Councillor Crowther.
Motion.
Councillor Curley.
Motion.
Councillor Jackson.
Amendment.
Councillor McCabe.
Amendment.
Convener.
Amendment.
Councillor McElhenney. Motion. Councillor Nelson. Oh, beg your pardon. Forgive me, Convener. Forgive me. Councillor Mackenzie.
Motion.
And Councillor Nelson.
Motion.
Convener, I have 6 votes for the motion by Councillor Curley. I have 5 votes for the amendment in your name. I'm just asking for confirmation from Ms. Lang. Confirmation. Convener, I will declare the motion carried by 6 votes to 5.
Okay. Okay, if we move on to item number 11, which is amendments to traffic regulation orders. Gail?
Hello, Convener. Yes, I've just moved, just in case Diane sees, I've moved from my laptop to the iPad. So this report sets out proposed changes to the traffic regulation process, and it aims to look at streamlining the process and ensure that we can bring forward orders in a quicker process, and we have liaised with both colleagues within legal but other local authorities to do benchmarking and look at how other local authorities do deliver this. I'm happy to take questions on the changes, and item 2.4 does set out those proposed changes.
Okay, Gail, thanks very much. Graham?
Thanks very much, Convener. Yeah, I support the 2.4 and also the recommendations at 3.1. I was asked to bring information that Councillor Wilson has been asking for similar changes for 15 years. So if this goes through, he welcomes the committee's decision.
We're all glad about that, Graham. Chris?
Thank you, Michael. Just with respect to how this work in here, I just want to just maybe cut across the legal terminology that's appropriate for this procedure. Can officers, through your convener with officers, can officers confirm whether or not this elected members in a particular ward would effectively have a veto on any TRO? Because I just want to make, because I was reading through, I just want to just double check that if a ward member objects to a particular TRO, there's still the opportunity for that to come before committee and or council as appropriate.
Gail?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. Ward members will be consulted, so they wouldn't have the opportunity to necessarily stop a traffic regulation order moving forward, but their feedback would be considered, and we would have that opportunity to have that engagement. It would then progress through the traffic regulation legal process that there is already in place.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Anybody else got any comments? No? Can we agree recommendations? Okay. Okay, item number 12 is a proposed traffic regulation order. Bruce Street, Greenock, one-way and prohibition of entry. Gerard? Jerry, you're on mute.
Sorry about that, convener. Sorry about that, convener. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
My apologies. This is there are no objections to this proposed TRO. It's access there at Roxburgh Street and south of Bruce Street, and the recommendations in terms of proceeding to the council.
Okay. Can we agree the recommendation? Yeah. Okay, item number 13 is a proposed regulation order off-street parking. By Gail, that's you again.
Convener, I can assist Gail on this basis. Gail can perhaps assist me if there's any specific questions. This is the second public consultation that was undertaken in respect of this wide TRO, affects a range of locations. The officers have dealt with representations and have made modifications in the light of objections that were received. They are noted in detail in paragraph 4.3. By dealing with these modifications, the officers and my roads colleagues have fully addressed the objections, and therefore the summary of the proposals, which are quite wide in terms of the areas of Gourock and Port Glasgow, are contained within page 133, and it's recommended that now there being no objections that these orders be made. This order be made.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Ron, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Just a couple of points. Obviously, as far as Gourock's concerned, I don't have any real concerns with that. I mean, I think there's been so many consultations and opinions on this one that it is the right thing to do to go forward. I think, from memory, this is probably the 4th time that arrangements have been changed in the Kempock Street car park. I know in terms of the free space, it was 25%, then 50%, currently 75%, and now we're moving on to this new system. The only comment I would have on this is that the main problem in the free area in Kempock Street is that people are parking there from really early in the morning. and they're staying there all day, and it was a free parking arrangement. In fact, believe it or not, we actually had some people who were reported to us who were parking there and going on holiday, because there was no penalties on them doing that. And I think everybody really agrees that it's the right thing to do to create churn in that car park, and having a free 3 hours period basically should allow, I would hope anyway, people to avail themselves of the cafes or the shops or something of that nature, and it should create churn. The only comment or the only point I would make would be, are we okay with a £2 penalty for the remainder of the time for 3 hours plus? Because basically, that being the case, it could well be that people would say, well, I'm prepared to spend £10 to get parked in that car park for 5 days. So I wondered why that we hadn't perhaps tried to introduce some sort of grading in terms of the paid periods like other local authorities have. For example, if you wanted to stay for a 4th hour, it costs you £1, a 5th hour £2, a 6th hour £3, for example, which I would assume probably would have got rid of that potential problem. I just wondered, what if we had considered that, and why, if we have considered it, why did we not proceed that way? And I think the second point I would ask of our officers is regarding the residents' parking permit arrangements, which people have been shouting and bawling for a long time. So I would really like to know, when will we have sort of final details of the residents' parking permits, and more importantly, perhaps the qualifying addresses. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. Members may recall that this report was previously brought to committee, and a decision was made to progress on the principles that are within this report. So we've been through the final stages of the traffic regulation order making process, and this is the point where we bring back the fact that there's been no objections to the proposals taken forward. The reason that it is a £2 charge is this is a consistent approach. There's a consistency throughout the local authority area in relation to that. But as with all our restrictions, we monitor and we review whether that is the correct approach, and should there be the proposal to amend that, we would at that point bring a proposal to the committee for members to consider. In relation to the residents' parking, that will progress on as soon as possible. In relation to this, we'll make residents aware that they now have the opportunity to apply for a residence permit, and they will also be provided with the guidance and specifications at that time.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Thanks, Gail. Gail, have you any indication as to how long that period will take? I do realise, of course, that during the COVID period, everyone's under a lot of pressure, but can you give us any indication as to when that may well commence?
Well, should approval be given by committee today, and then this report then goes for ratification to council, should that be provided, then we would be within a couple of weeks after that, we'll be able to issue the paperwork.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Appreciate that. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, right. Jim Cockerly.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I mean, obviously, it's concerning Gourock and Port Glasgow, and as a Greenock councillor, I'm a wee bit worried about comment on it, but considering that Councillor Alfield especially decided that it'd be okay to charge the people in Jamaica Street £2, but he was actually going against it for Kempock Street, it was just, I feel as if I'm okay to comment on it now. I suppose one of the things we've got is that in the Gourock and the Kempock Street, we've been here various times, but it's been on the back of Gourock councillors. it's not been on the back of a roads department. It's been on the back of Gourock councillors changing their minds of what they wanted to do in Kempbrook Street. So I think we've got to make that clear. I think what is proposed is sensible. But I mean, obviously that's from a Greenock councillor's point of view. But to me, I can't see anything wrong with the proposals.
Michael, excuse me, can I just respond to that if you don't mind?
Well, if I can respond to you, Ronnie,
Yeah, sure. The point was that I was not against charging in Kempbrook Street at all. I was just asking about the grade of charges.
But that would be separate to what you have just agreed at Jamaica Street.
I am perfectly happy about the changes, because it's not been the councillors who have dictated the changes, it's been the people. And that's why we're there. Thanks.
You did mention it, Ronnie.
Okay, Stephen.
Thanks, Convener. I was going to ask Gail, in terms of paragraph 4.3, why she's made the modifications that she has and what implications those modifications have for one of the objectives of introducing charging in car parks, which was to raise additional revenue in the region of £100,000 a year.
Yep, thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. When you promote a traffic regulation order, when there's maintained objections, you're able to reduce an order. This allows us to progress this now with no delay. The other car parks did have maintained objections. We wrote back to the objectors and they have maintained those objections. Therefore, we're going to run that as a separate traffic regulation order process. So these will still be promoted and they'll still be processed through the legal process. However, they will sit in a separate order, which allows us to progress these without further delay. In relation to that, it does mean that there is a reduction to the anticipated income. However, it does mean that we're able to access an element of that income quicker. I hope that addresses your...
Yeah, that's helpful. Could you give us a sort of understanding of the timescale for the further TRO or TROs?
Yes, the team are looking to progress that separate TRO now. So it would run behind the TRO that's been processed at the moment, but with a short delay behind it. So we would look at within the next 2 to 3 months being able to go through the legal process. However, that is dependent on the objections that are maintained and what process we need to go to be able to address those.
I'm just on the back. I'm just wondering whether there is merit in having separate TROs, one for the 2 Port Glasgow proposals and one for the Kilmacole proposal.
It may be. That is something that the team can consider with colleagues in legal about the best way forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I see on the chat that Chris has got a problem hearing what's going on at committee. Chris, can you hear us now?
Yeah, it's got a bit better.
Okay. And your spelling's terrible, Chris. Okay, can we agree with the recommendations? Okay, item number 14 is another proposed traffic regulation order. Jerry.
Again, Convener, thank you. There's been an objection in relation to this order, even though there's been no actual response. It must be considered to be maintained. And therefore, as far as the proposal here just now, which is the no waiting proposals, at the number of locations that are contained within paragraphs 2, 3, 1 and 2, it would require that the committee consider having a public hearing, or alternatively to appoint an independent reporter. It is entirely competent of the committee in these circumstances to consider and hold a public hearing through the committee processes if it wishes. A special meeting would be required, and we'd arrange that in with you, Convener, in terms of suitable dates.
Okay, are we in agreement for holding a special meeting to deal with that particular item? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. Hey, sorry, Jim.
Yeah, it was a question on the process, page 159, 4.2. During the period of both public consultation, one objection was received. Wrote to the objector, and the objector did not respond. Therefore, their objection is considered to be maintained. Why would that be? Why would it not be? Would there not be a form of words to put out, say, here's the reason or the rationale why we've done this, we've addressed your concerns or your objection. If you still wish to, then please respond within a set amount of period or by such and such a date. Why are we assuming that no response is a maintained objection?
Of course, convener. As I tried to refer to in my introduction there, we have to treat this as a maintained objection, as the report states. I am flagging up to members that there has been no response, but the person is entitled to consider that that's a maintained objection. We will, of course, write to the objector when we have the date, and we will be making the point that it is that objector's entitlement to attend, and we will be able to deal with any issues if the objector chooses to engage with us. But it is the objector's entitlement and need not enter into any correspondence with myself or my roads colleagues, and therefore we will go through the process of fixing the hearing. And even if we arrive at that date, convener, we will require to convene as a committee, but we would normally have prior advice if there's not going to be any maintained objection, and that way we would save everyone the trouble of attending if there's going to be no hearing as such. I hope that helps, Councillor McElhinney, convener.
Okay, Jim. Yeah. Okay. Can we move on to item number 15, which is another traffic regulation order and no waiting in Gurlock Inverkip Women's Bay waiting restrictions. Jerry?
Situation here again, convener. We've got 5 objectors following the first arrangements. They did not respond, and therefore, mirroring my comments just a few moments ago, they are considered to be maintained. Again, convener, it is the committee's decision whether to deal with this through a public hearing or to appoint an independent reporter. I can advise that there's no impediment to the committee holding a public hearing.
Okay. Would it be possible, Jerry, to hold that the same day as the other one?
Yes, convener. We would do that very much at your discretion. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We're in agreement with that. Yeah. Okay. Item number 16 is another TRO, disabled parking places in South Street. Jerry?
Convener, no objections to this order as you've introduced. Be recommending processing us through the arrangements in paragraph 3.1.
Okay, can we agree? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 17, another TRO at the A70 Inverkip Road and Branching Road, Greenock. Jerry?
Convener, no objection to this TRO. It's been recommended that we go to the council on this matter. The location is as identified by you.
Okay, don't see any questions. Okay with that? Everyone agree recommendations? Yeah. Okay, item number 18 is a proposed redetermination order at the A70 Inverkip Road, Branching Road and Glenver Road. Yeah.
Convener, the details of this are perhaps best explained on the plan on page 248. Members will be aware of that location. This is the necessary redetermination order in order to determine the public right of passage on that part of the pavement in order to ensure public safety. There's no objections, convener, and we recommended that we go to the council on this one.
Okay, is that agreed, everyone? Yeah. Okay. Item 19 is the joint collaboration between Mcqueen and Western Battleship councils and the interim management proposals for grounds and roads. Gail?
Thank you, convener. This reports it's a proposal for an interim management arrangement for a temporary period until April 2021. Both councils have a vacancy currently in the roads and environment management structure, namely grounds in Inverclyde and roads in Western Barnshire Council. As we're in a period of dealing with the pandemic and our winter period as well, this report proposes that this interim management position will provide resilience and support to the service during this period. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Don't see any questions. We're okay with that? Can we agree? Yep. Okay. Item number 20 is a report on the public consultation relating to the site of the former Hector McNeill baths. Jenny?
Convener, it is important that the committee consider this report. The background to this report is in respect of the proposed new Inverclyde Community Learning Disability Hub, of which members will be aware of generally, and of which there's a brief explanatory background contained within paragraph 4.2 of this report, page 254. However, this report is in respect of the site issues affected by the consultation process, the public consultation process. This is a process that this council has undertaken as the site of the former Hector McNeill baths is part of the council's inalienable common good. That's inalienable common good at the highest level. It means to say that before making any disposals or appropriating a site for any other type of use, there will require to be the consent of the court. This report in no way presumes the outcome of the court process or the court decision, and that will be a legitimate process whereby other parties, community groups, interested parties will have an opportunity, if they wish, to make comments to the courts in terms of any proposals that come forward thereafter. However, Convener, in terms of the requirements, the consultation period ran for a period of 8 weeks. In terms of the quite formal procedures set out in paragraph 4.5. In terms of the responses, Convener, my colleague Mrs McGee wrote out to all elected members on the 18th of December and took steps to amend the public report. I think perhaps she was trying to address Councillor Alfell's earlier question on the capital programme and on Drumshanty Road, because wrongly, but not fatally or anything, wrongly the papers in respect of Drumshanty, or part of them, were included within pages 258 and so on of this report. There are only 2 consultations received for the Hector McNeill baths site, and members' attention has been brought to bear on that, and that's from the Port Glasgow West Community Council and from the Greenock South West Community Council, both of which are in support of that. One of the councils saying that of course they would wish, the Greenock South West, they would wish to know the details of the project and reserve the position at that later stage, but are otherwise supportive of it. We will of course make sure that there's full engagement with the Greenock South West and indeed Port Glasgow West community councils in terms of any proposals. It's necessary for this council to consider these objections just now, these responses just now, because obviously that will determine the course of action hereafter, and we'd be asking if the committee is agreeing to approve in principle, subject to the approval of the court, subject to the council obtaining that consent to any approbation, that in principle we have the approval to proceed with the Learning Disability Hub. I hope that helps, Convener. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Graham, do you want to come in?
Thanks very much, Convener. Just, I wonder if Jerry can help us with a timescale. Obviously, court proceedings are obviously a massive backlog with regards to the pandemic. So this could go on for a long time, or am I misunderstanding the court proceeding? Could it happen simply with the judge?
Yeah.
Convener, Councillor Brooks is right. It would be impossible to offer a definitive timescale. There's a dependency there, dependency in terms of the types of responses that would be received to the court process. What we have done already is that we have prepared, in the light of the consultation responses received and this report going forward, we've prepared what is termed the initial writ. We have some experience, as you know, in terms of our other processes with the common good, in terms of the periods that it took to deal with another separate area that's quite close to this area of ground, and that was not unduly long, if I may put it in those vague terms. If there were to be objections, there would have to be hearings, and that would be an issue in terms of the court processes just now through COVID. So it'd be difficult for me, convener, to give any type of definitive timescale. I would report back, obviously, in terms of any updates to the committee, but indicatively, this could be something within the range of 6 months to 12 months, and that's the broadest indication, subject to those dependencies. Thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item number 21 is the procurement of pay and display machines. Gail?
Thank you, convener. This report seeks approval to use Eastern Shire's purchasing organisation as a route to procure the additional parking machines required for the additional car parks being introduced for charging. That we have looked at different procurement routes, and we believe that this is the appropriate route to take. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Graham?
Thanks very much. It's simply a comment. Obviously, we're going to need more of these now for Jamaica Street. But I just to bring to the committee's notice that ESPO have a modern slavery and human traffic statement, which goes to the really positive step of looking at positive procurement. It looks about the free trade, it looks about how they procure, and they have a very clear statement on modern slavery and human trafficking. And obviously procurement's not here, but I know obviously the Scott is. It's just fantastic to see that we're going to purchase a product from somebody who has taken human trafficking seriously. And it's maybe a step for the future. I wonder whether it's not a request, it's just a thought. I wonder whether our procurement could actually look to see whether future purchases from suppliers have got a positive policy on human trafficking.
Gerard, do you want to come in that?
Convener, may I please ask Stuart, Mr. Jimison, to perhaps assist there relative to any of the procurement issues. Obviously, we would incorporate any aspect in terms of anything that is public safeguard or in respect of preserving the human rights of the individual. But I would require to have the advice of the procurement team on that one, please, convener.
Stuart, you've been unusually quiet today.
It's been wonderful, convener. Happy to look into this, convener, and we'll revert back to committee in due course.
Okay. Okay, can we agree on recommendations? Yeah. Okay. Okay, the remaining items have to be held in private. If I can ask
it's the additional item, please, convener, first. The additional item on parking, which is the paper that's been circulated as an additional paper.
Okay.
And we would ask you, convener, whether or not you would certify that as urgent and necessary in these terms.
Yeah, we'll deal with that as well, Jerry. Is that Gail that's taking that?
Yes, convener. I'll do the introduction to that. Members may recall that at last committee it was agreed to defer the recommencement of enforcement restrictions within resident parking zones and off-street time-restricted parking areas. This report recommends that this position continues and is reviewed in line with the easing of the Scottish Government restrictions when they occur. Happy to take questions.
Okay. Can we agree that recommendation? Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, Gail. Okay, as I said, the remaining items are now to be held.
No press.
Thank you, convener.
Okay.
Thank you, convener. You're moving the exclusion of press and the public, and please, convener, with your permission, I'm just checking through the lists just now.
I think Sharon just said they'd left, Jerry.
Thank you, in which case I will pay particular attention to that comment. We're in private session. Thank you, convener.
Okay.